What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Sector for Nerds. I'm Ryan Brower, and today I'm here to give you guys my thoughts on The Bad Batch Episode 1 Aftermath, which was an amazing episode. This episode had me hooked from start to finish, and I cannot wait to talk more about it. But before we do that, make sure you guys subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, or if this is your first time watching, because I like to do a lot of reaction videos on the channel. I'm also going to be doing a discussion on every single episode of The Bad Batch once they are released. I've done the same with the shows like The Mandalorian, Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7, and I'm going to do it with future Star Wars shows as well. I also do some like Marvel shows as well, like WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm going to be doing the same with Loki, so make sure you guys are staying tuned to the channel because there's going to be a lot of great discussions coming up about things such as The Bad Batch and Loki and all future Star Wars and Marvel content on Disney+. So I want to get to the main subject of this video first before we dive into the other stuff, because at the end of this episode, the Bad Batch are on the run with Omega, who is the new recruit for the Bad Batch. We lost Crosshair, but we gained Omega. And they talk about heading to J19, and people might be wondering, what does that mean? Fortunately for me, I have the answer for you guys. So J19 is a reference to Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 2, when Koth is giving hand signals to the Jedi so they know where to go and rescue him. Obi-Wan picks up on this in a holo transmission, and Obi-Wan repeats back what hand signals Koth is giving, and Koth is saying, Seleucami System, Sector J19. So most likely, guys, they are going to be going to Seleucami. But you may be thinking, but what clone lives on Seleucami? Glad you asked, because that is none other than Cut Lawquane. Cut Lawquane served at the Battle of Geonosis. His troop transport was attacked by two separatist gunships. After it crashed, the droids started making their way through the wounded. Cut knew there was no hope, so he ran. Something he said back in Season 2 that still haunts him. Cut is now just a simple farmer. He's married. They have kids. I don't think the kids are actually his. He's just more of their stepfather. But the point being, guys, we're probably going to see Cut Lawquane in the next episode of The Bad Batch. So it seems that Bad Batch is going to be on the run from Crosshair, so I think it would be interesting if they did keep going to this list of clones or whatever that they have as allies, which, according to Tech, is a select few, but Cut could be one of them. We could see Rex, which, we know we see in the trailer. We could see potentially Gregor, from Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars as well. We could see Wolf. Very interesting, you guys, that they have this list of allies, and surprising that Cut would be one of them. But I'm very excited to see where this show goes, you guys. I was such a big fan of this episode, but instead of me telling you that, let's continue to talk about this episode. Let's talk about that intro. I loved the intro. I loved listening to Tom Kane's voice again, especially after hearing about the fact that he had lost his voice, and I don't know if this was recorded before that. It probably was, but just hearing his voice again, it was an absolute sight to behold. It was kind of a traditional opening scene for the Clone Wars, the way that they did with the music and the way that they shot it. It was cool to see, especially because this does feel like a direct sequel or tie-in to the Clone Wars. So, let's talk about that opening scene, right? Let's talk about the fact that we get to see frickin' Kanan Jarrus in Clone Wars form, if you will. We saw it for like a brief second at the beginning of the first Siege of Mandalore episode, but now not only do we actually get to see, or not only do we get to see him, but we get to see him in action, and we get to listen to him being voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr., who originally voiced him for Rebels. We get to see his master, Depa Billaba, in there, and yeah, we get our fourth Order 66 scene that's on screen, which is crazy. The Bad Batch looked confused as all heck when it was going on. We did get to see Sidious for a brief second on one of the clone troopers' holograms, and Depa saw it, and she's like, yeah, no, I ain't having none of this, and so she started to defend herself. She told Kanan to run, or I should say Caleb, because that's what he was being called at this point, was Caleb DUME. So, yeah, she told Caleb to run, which is something we obviously remember from Rebels, that Kanan told the Inquisitor, like, when he asked, you know, what was her last word to you? And he said, run. All of the Bad Batch guys were questioning Order 66, except for Crosshair, really, because, you know, Hunter and Crosshair go to look for Caleb, and the minute that they find him, Crosshair takes out his sniper gun and starts shooting at him, and Hunter's like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And, like, Hunter's trying to reason with Caleb, and Caleb just, you know, reasonably just doesn't trust these clones, especially after what they, you know, he had to watch his master die. So you can completely understand where Kanan doesn't trust clones. Granted, you could kind of do that before in Rebels. Like, I know there were a lot of people at the start like, oh, why doesn't Kanan like Rex and stuff? But it's like, okay, but hold on, guys. Like, I'm sure, you know, like many Jedi, they were probably felt betrayed by the fact that the clones turned on them. Also, real quick in regards to the opening scene that I forgot to talk about with the Tom Kane intro, they showed legit scenes from Revenge of the Sith in that intro in animated form. Like, they showed Obi-Wan cutting up a magma guard like we see in Revenge of the Sith. We see Anakin rescuing the Chancellor by slicing up the 2 battle droids. We got another shot of General Grievous. Alright, I'm not gonna lie though. Dave, I really wish you would stop showing me these amazing pictures of General Grievous, these amazing shots of Grievous, when you know you really can't use them for more than 2 seconds. Though, granted, I also get it, though. It's just like, okay, well, you know what? We've got the Disney money backing us. Let's just make this really awesome shot of Grievous and show the people what we could have done had Clone Wars continued. Though it kind of is continuing, just not in the Clone Wars era, if you will. Because this is the aftermath of the Clone Wars. See what I did there? Let's get into some of the stuff that went down on Kamino. First off, who on earth was that Jedi that they killed? And by they, I mean the clones that were there on Kamino. Because I don't know of any Jedi that would have been stationed on Kamino. The only one that we would have seen in the Clone Wars anyway was Shakti when she was helping, you know, monitor the clones and training them. But we know that she wasn't there when Order 66 went down, so I'm not sure who that would have been. We get to see Tarkin in this show, as we have seen from the trailers. I absolutely hate Tarkin, you guys. Like, he's my least favorite character in Star Wars. He's such a dick. Like, let's be real. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is the point, though, you guys, where Tarkin has just got to be thriving and having, like, the absolute time of his life, because now the Republic has become the Empire. He's going to have so much more power, especially because he has fallen into favor with the Chancellor, so he's just got to be having so much fun right now, and it makes me hate him even more. So, let's talk about the training scene. Oh wait, but before that, food fight! They had an actual food fight in Star Wars, and I thought it was hilarious. Omega threw the first shot, and the clone got all up in his face, and everybody from Bad Batch backed Omega up, and then the clone starts walking away, and then my man Wrecker throws a second tray and is basically like, game on, motherfuckers! So after this food fight, they have a Citadel-like training session. They go through it pretty simple, and Wrecker's like, what else you got? Give me more! And Tarkin's like, okay, give him more, give him live rounds, and the Kaminoans are like, wait, what? That's another thing that I found interesting about this episode, is the fact that the Kaminoans were very, like, hesitant towards everything that was going on. And I think the reason for it is because Tarkin was talking about the idea of not using clones anymore because he hates them, and using, like, actual, you know, living beings, you know, to him, because to me the clones are living beings, but to him they're not. So, yeah, just to kind of clarify. And so the Kaminoans were upset about it, because most likely because they were not going to be making much money anymore. I don't know if it had to do with the actual clones or anything like that. But Tarkin was like, all right, use live rounds. And so the Kaminoans were like, okay, we're using live rounds, I guess. And so Bad Batch had to overcome that. They managed to. And then Tarkin sends them off on a mission to Onderon to deal with insurgents, which Hunter had automatically assumed were droids. But nope, they ended up being nothing more than some, you know, like Saw Gerrera, his ragtag group of rebels, but it wasn't just them that they were with. There were women and children there. There were refugees from Onderon. And then this motherfucker Crosshair's just like, okay, yep, no, we gotta take these innocent civilians out. And Hunter's like, whoa, 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 what on earth are you doing? Now, guys, I will say this much. So, Wrecker has, you know, since the Clone Wars Season 7, Wrecker has kind of been like my favorite member of the Bad Batch. When it came to Hunter, I didn't really understand or I guess I wasn't necessarily into the character as much. Like, don't get me wrong, Hunter, like, was the, like, looked the most badass out of all those guys in the Bad Batch, but there wasn't really anything for me to, like, just hook onto, like, when it came to the character, but this episode made me do that. I was a huge fan of Hunter in this episode. I love how Hunter stepped up as the leader, and it's like, okay, we need to figure out what's going on, and, like, his main goal was to make sure that his boys were gonna be okay. But he also wanted to make sure that he wasn't making any wrong decisions either. He didn't want to have to kill Caleb Dume. He didn't want to attack innocent civilians. He didn't want to leave Omega behind. Well, that was kind of something that he decided more later in the episode, but you get my point, is that he's trying to make the right decisions, and he's trying to keep his group together. Unfortunately, Crosshair not, you know, being too kind right now. They go to meet Saw Gerrera. Saw has a conversation with them about Palpatine and them, like, talking about how the Clone Wars is ending, but a new galactic civil war is about to begin. I actually like that line. That was really dope. And he says, you know, you can either adapt and survive or die with the past. The decision is yours. And so he kind of just leaves Bad Batch there. Bad Batch leave and go their own separate way. Crosshair gets upset because they didn't complete the mission. There was a probe that followed them there, so Tarkin was able to see the whole thing go down. They decide to go after Omega because they realize that Omega is the 5th enhanced clone, because Echo is technically a reg. When they get back to Kamino, they're like, all right, we're gonna split up and we're gonna find Omega. Which also, I didn't like the idea of them splitting up, just because when does splitting up in Star Wars ever work out for anybody? Just saying, but it doesn't matter because they're surrounded by the Coruscant Guard and Tarkin. They throw Bad Batch in jail. They end up taking Crosshair to a room, and they basically find out that there is an inhibitor chip in him, but it's not really fully functional yet, but he is, you know, still being loyal to the Empire. So Tarkin asked if they could kind of enhance the inhibitor chip traits, and they could, so they did, and Tarkin had a huge, you know, like, evil grin on his face, which I hated. Omega helps the Bad Batch escape. They end up getting to their ship. They're about to go find Crosshair, but nope, Crosshair comes to them. Now, it is kind of interesting that early on when they're in the prison, Omega looks at Crosshair and she says, I know what you're about to do, and just know that it's not your fault. So then she also was able to foresee that Crosshair was coming to the hangar as well. So it makes me feel almost like she's kind of like a Force-sensitive clone, almost. Like, I don't know. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. Like, I know Hunter's supposed to be kind of good with the sensing stuff as well, so maybe they have similar traits or something like that. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, Omega also picks up a blaster for the first time, and she frickin' takes out Crosshair's sniper gun. So, I mean, she's able to adapt to things quickly. The Bad Batch are able to get off Kamino. Crosshair is now one of the villains, which we all kind of thought was going to happen. I know the Black Series action figure or whatever kind of spoiled that as well. But yeah, I mean, you could just tell, guys, the way that this episode was going, that Crosshair was definitely going to go down a dark path. Now, what I think could happen in this show potentially, even if it's not necessarily in season 1, but they do it in like a season 2 or something, like, I'm not sure, but if they're able to remove the chip from Crosshair's head, if he would feel any differently about the Empire. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like what Ahsoka did for Rex. Like, I know Crosshair before was already like, you know, Empire this, Empire that, but he was also conflicted, and Omega said, like, what you're about to do isn't your fault. So I feel like there could be a way to save Crosshair if they're able to remove the chip from his head. Now, whether or not that's going to end up happening is a different story. But I tell you what, guys, I loved this episode so freaking much. I loved the fact that it was 70 minutes. I never for a second felt bored. I love the fact that the Clone Wars animation style is back. I love that this is almost like a direct tie-in to the Clone Wars, and it's basically like the, you know, like the title says, the aftermath of the Clone Wars. I'm very excited to see where we go, you know, probably head into J19, probably to see Cut LaQuaine, but where we continue to go from here is going to just be pretty interesting, because, you know, Hunter said, hey, like, we could probably just lay low for a bit, but the problem is that Crosshair is on our back. So I'm wondering if Crosshair is going to have a way of tracking the Bad Batch, because he does know them better, you know, out of anybody in the Empire. So maybe they're going to use his expertise to help find the Bad Batch. Maybe early on he planted a tracker on their ship or something like that, I'm not sure. But like I said, guys, I'm very excited. If we weren't able to get more seasons of Clone Wars, I'm glad that we're at least able to get this, because this to me feels a lot like the Clone Wars, but just, you know, kind of coming towards the end of the war and towards, you know, post Revenge of the Sith. I appreciate that, you know, we're getting that side of Star Wars, because it's something we haven't necessarily seen on screen anyway as much. So you guys will have to let me know in the comments what your guys' thoughts on this episode were, if you guys are excited for future episodes to come, because I tell you what, I know I am. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share this video around as it really helps support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.
This is the way.
This is the way.